So yeah, welcome. As Monsef mentioned, today we'll be presenting a lot of information. I'll kind of go through this in a second, but we'll be trying to highlight kind of the most important information as we go, but you can also use these slides as a reference as we're moving forward. So today, the kind of 5 topics that we'll go into detail on. One is kind of where we're at in this retrofit implementation timeline. We'll then go through probably the most important part of the next few months, which is CU and our subrecipients or our nonprofits entering into contract with each other to pursue these retrofits. We'll go through a few of the kind of contractual terms and conditions that are going to be flowing down from DOE to our subrecipients. Just so you're aware of a few things to keep an eye out for in the contracts that we'll be working on, and then a few things that CU is going to require. We'll go into a little bit of detail of what the invoicing process will look like, how we'll be expecting everyone to be reporting cost share, and more information about that will be kind of developed in the coming month or so. We'll kind of summarize roles and responsibilities and then kind of highlight the most important things for all of us to be working on over the next few weeks. So like I mentioned, this is going to be a lot of information. Kind of use these as a guide. I won't go through every little topic on every slide, but as we're working through these forms and these processes, kind of look back on these slides as an overall kind of map of where we're going. And, kind of the caveat, this is also at this point, we're doing our best to present to you the best information we have available to us. But exactly what's in the subrecipient contract or exactly how some forms or some invoicing procedures may look could change between now and when they're implemented. So this, things should look roughly like what we're presenting today, but there may be some changes. And we won't really know exactly what these contracts look like until we get to the point of submitting everything to our subcontracting officer and having these contracts drafted. So it'll be key, as we all move together on this journey to stay in communication and kind of be as transparent as possible as to where we're at, what we know, what we don't know yet, and what we're figuring out learning. So this is kind of what we're hoping the next couple of years are going to look like for all of us. Here we are in August 2026. And as of today, the Department of Energy, they're still reviewing our continuation application to proceed to budget period 2. But, good news is that should be kind of coming back to us any day now. We're kind of reaching the end of the period that DOE says that they have available to them to review these. So hopefully we have some good news very shortly that we're going into this budget period 2. The big part of that is that the funding that will be available for the retrofits will be then made available to CU. Mohammed, I see you have your hand raised. Do you have a quick clarifying question before we continue?
Yeah, I wanted to know if we're going to get a copy of these slides or if this is something we should take notes on.
You will get a copy. It'll be posted on our website, and the recording will also be posted on our YouTube channel, which will be linked to from our website. We can share the link to where it's at on the website.
Yeah, that'd be great.
No problem.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So we're here at the start of the process, and kind of, we're trying to get ahead of a few things so that when we get this approval for going into budget period 2, we're already ahead of the game, because there's a lot of moving parts, and the more kind of boxes we can check early on getting everything set up, the better. So here between now and really January is what we'll call the project planning phase. And the goal here is to really kind of get everybody under contract with CU. And what's required there, we'll go into detail of. We'll also need to have kind of scopes of projects defined, and we'll go through a NEPA approval. CU will do that, and we'll go into more detail on that later. And some projects might be faster. Some nonprofits might be able to go through all of this faster than others. So there's a broad window, but I think overall, the sooner we can get through this planning phase, the better. We move into kind of the project phase after that. So we'll start getting bids, contracting with retrofit subcontractors, working on the compliance part of the grant. Then we'll move into implementation, where the construction projects are actually occurring. So the earliest, we're kind of anticipating that happening is here in a couple of months, November. That'll go for a year. So we'll have about a year from November of this year to have all projects completed, closed out, and all invoicing reconciled. About a year, in November of next year, we will be reporting to DOE how this first cycle of retrofit implementation went. And at the same time, we will start a 1-year period of measurement and verification of all your facilities. And that's, for us, that helps us ensure that the implementation was successful, that we're hitting the targets we estimated when we were designing these retrofits and recommending these retrofits. And so all these timelines are based on what we call with Department of Energy our Statement of Project Objectives, or our SOPO. And so to the best of our ability, these timelines should be met. Okay. I'm just going to double check the chat really quick. Yeah, thank you, NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act. And we'll go through all of this in a lot of detail. So as we kind of move into this, I wanted to make you aware of one little hiccup, I would say, that we're encountering. So when we kind of submitted our budget period 2 continuing application, we had 8 facilities that we have all the documentation required to just kind of move forward with right away. And so those are what we're calling our cycle 1 facilities here, or sorry, our phase 1 facilities. So all 8 of these, really right away, as soon as things, get approved for budget period 2, we're good to move forward 100%. These other 4 listed as our phase 2 facilities, these have 1 or 2 steps that we have to do before we can include them in what we call a budget justification form that DOE will receive. So 3 of these are located on tribal land, and we need to kind of work with Department of Energy to communicate with the tribes of those, the tribes kind of managing the land where these facilities are located, on getting approval from their tribal historic preservation organizations, THPO, or offices. And so we're in the process of doing this. This is a CU kind of responsibility. And so, we should, there's no issue with getting this submitted and getting these approved. And then the 4th there is a state historic preservation office approval requirement. So what's going to happen with these phase 2 facilities is right now we're going to keep working on everything we need in order to get the materials we need for subcontracting. It's just that DOE, we won't include these 4 facilities on our official kind of budget justification until October, when there's another approval window. And it's not like there's a big approval process to add facilities to this. We just can't get these facilities added to this form until we go through these initial steps of getting kind of THPO approval or SHPO approval. So if you're a part of one of these facilities that is in phase 2 and you have any questions, please let us know. But keep in mind, everything I'm presenting, we all need to be working on now, so that when we hit that October window, we're good to go. Okay. So what does it look like to enter into contract with CU, and what is this process? The way this works is nonprofits of the RAND program will be subrecipients of the grant. CU, as the prime of the grant, is receiving funding from Department of Energy. And then we are entering into contract with the nonprofits as subrecipients. And that allows us to then distribute that funding to the subrecipients. And so what that means is that we have to do what's called subrecipient contracting. There's a few steps here. The first, we've already reached out to everybody about. And this is really important for the invoicing side, so the kind of exchanging of dollars. CU's procurement system is called Marketplace, and we need to add all the nonprofits to Marketplace as suppliers. And this is really just a way that you get added to our system where we can invoice, we can process your invoices. So please, as soon as you can, send us the invoicing point of contact for your organization if you haven't. I'll go into this, I'll remind you of this at the end of the talk. But with that point of contact, we can work on adding you to this system.
Okay.
The next most important thing that we need is a project budget. And so, kind of marketplace and budget are the two kind of big things that we can be working on now. And through this presentation, we'll talk about a few things to kind of go back and look at your quotes, talk with the companies that you've got quotes from, confirm that some of these requirements are included in those quotes. If they're not, we need to get those quotes updated. And then we need to make sure that kind of what they're quoting is current, because since there was a pretty long delay since those quotes were received, there may have been price changes, most likely price increases. We also have about 3 forms that we'll need you to fill out as kind of required documentation, and we'll go into those in detail. And once we have kind of you added to the system and marketplace, your budget, some documentation, we can submit all these materials to our subcontracting officer, an individual at CU named Andrew Osborne. I'm not sure if he's on the call, but Andrew will be the one that's doing the legwork of drafting these subcontracts. And so he'll be kind of a point of contact when we get to that phase. He'll review all of our documentation. He'll do some due diligence. He'll draft the subrecipient agreements. He'll distribute them for signatures. Once we have that signature, once we're into contract with each other, we're good to go on getting these projects going. But Department of Energy does have some requirements before any construction begins. So for example, we have to get contractor contracts signed. We need construction timelines from them. We need NEPA approvals. That's a CU requirement or a CU responsibility. And we need to do some Davis-Bacon system onboarding. So just because we have the contract doesn't mean we can start building stuff. There's still some materials we have to get kind of signatures on and get approved before we really start construction. But once we're there, then we can implement, and then we'll get into a cycle of the nonprofits invoicing us monthly for incurred expenses, reporting their cost share monthly. And then once those invoices are approved, we'll be reimbursing you. And we'll kind of get into a little bit more detail of that here in a second. I'm just going to check the chat. There we go. Yeah, so I'll address a couple of these here later. So yeah, good. Keep adding your questions to the chat. Okay, so to summarize how this contracting flows, Department of Energy, we're already contracted with them for budget period 1. And once budget period 2 is approved, we'll be entering into contract with them for budget period 2. CU Boulder will then have, this funding available to now enter into contract with the nonprofits, the subrecipients. And then the subrecipients, once we're under contract together, you can then go and hire or enter into contract with retrofit subcontractors. And then if we think about how invoices are going to flow, it's going to kind of happen in reverse. So the retrofit subcontractors will be invoicing you, the nonprofits, at a frequency that'll kind of depend on the construction contract. Nonprofits will then be invoicing CU Boulder monthly. And then every quarter, CU will kind of collect all the expenses that we've incurred over that quarter and submit an invoice to Department of Energy. And then payment flows kind of in that direction in reverse. You as nonprofits will pay the retrofit subcontractors their invoices monthly. When your invoice is improved, CU Boulder will then reimburse you for expenses. And then Department of Energy quarterly, once our invoice is approved, will it be reimbursing us. So it's a cost reimbursable contract. Okay, so to initiate this contracting process, this subrecipient contracting process, there's 6 things that we definitely need. The first is the retrofit project budget. So that would be kind of how much will it cost to implement your retrofits. And then we also at this point need to be thinking, will there be any need for like personnel expenses on your budget? Um, what will be kind of personnel expenses that are cost share, but not kind of budget reimbursable? And we can kind of work through what what the details of this mean here as we go through the next month. But eventually we need kind of a final budget. Based on the final budget, we will also need an updated cost share commitment letter, because that cost share commitment letter needs to reflect, a contribution of 20% of that kind of project budget to the project. We'll need a budget justification, and this is something that our team can put together. But we may be reaching out to you if we need additional information to justify what's in the budget. Again, statement of work. This is something that CU primarily will be leading, but we will be reaching out if we need additional details. And this really is going to just reflect the budget. What if retrofits are being implemented? What's the approximate construction schedule? What is going to be a deliverable at the end of all this? And then what, expectations do we have of you? And some of these will go, many of these will go through later in this talk. Then the 3 forms, we did distribute these, when we invited you all to this. No worries if you haven't had a chance to look at them. We'll go through them in a little bit of detail here today. But we will need these 3 forms: the subrecipient commitment form, the civil rights evaluation tool, and most likely a no audit questionnaire. The last one is a negotiated indirect cost rate agreement. It's most likely that, you all have not done a lot of federal funding, but if you have, you may have a negotiated indirect cost rate agreement. So if you have one, then we'll need that. If you do not have one, which is, like I said, likely, then what we'll be doing is, if you're able to bill indirects to this project, which we're still sorting out, then we'll be able to do the de minimis. And I'll go into that in more detail here in a second. Okay, so just to look really quick at these forms. And many of these forms will look a little intimidating. That's okay. Hopefully these slides can help guide you through much of it. So kind of bear with me as we go through this. So for the subrecipient commitment form, the goal of this is to kind of gather your information about you as a subrecipient, and kind of understand your position and ability to meet the requirements there are of receiving federal funding. So a few of these here. So you'll have a UEI number that's from sam.gov, taxpayer identification number. Your NI or NAICS code is listed here. So, most of all of our nonprofits are religious organizations. So this is just a kind of a census code. This link, if you want to look at it, can help you there. The proposal title, prime sponsor, CU Boulder PI are all listed here. And then the subrecipient PI and subrecipient post-award admin would be kind of your main point of contact for kind of the retrofit project, and the main point of contact for invoicing, respectively. And here, for section A, we just need a proposal or a statement of work and a budget. The other checks don't apply as far as I'm aware. Okay, and this is where we get into a bit of the nitty-gritty of this form. I won't go through all of this, but for question 1, overhead rates, we are currently working with Department of Energy on answering the question of whether RAN subrecipients can bill for indirects. So when you get to filling out this form, this will either be not applicable if Department of Energy comes back to us and says, no, we can't, overhead is not allowable on this grant, or if you don't want to bill overhead, because that could be a situation where less funding is available for the actual retrofit. If you are able to charge overhead and you're interested in doing so, and if you don't have a negotiated indirect rate with the federal government, then what you would be able to do is have a de minimis or 15% indirect rate of your modified total direct costs. And we can help with the calculation of that when it comes time and if this is possible. Again, on number two, there are, if you end up having some personnel on this budget, then we'll need to have kind of a justification or a basis for what their benefit rate is. When it comes down to number four, cost sharing, yes, there's cost share, and your type is in kind. There's a cash option, and that is not applicable here. All of your cost sharing will be in kind for this. And then kind of looking down at 8, you will either have to have a conflict of interest policy or agree to adopt CUs. Number 10 for the civil rights certification, this will kind of mirror what you're filling out for the civil rights evaluation form. There's some due diligence questions related to debarment and suspension. Fiscal responsibility ensures that you can comply with the fiscal requirements of this grant. That's called uniform guidance. There has to be a drug-free workplace policy. You have to certify, do some certification regarding lobbying, which is also in the flow down requirements from Department of Energy. And then there's a requirement that you maintain your UE&I number, your profile in SAM.gov for the duration of the grant. And the last section here, section C, is kind of related to whether you as an organization are receiving annual audits. Most likely this is a no. And if you are not receiving annual audits from the federal government, you will need to fill out the no audit questionnaire. So the civil rights evaluation tool, this is a short form, but it could be an onerous one for you. So this form has 3 questions on it. And they all must be yes at some point. You have to be working on adopting a non-discrimination policy that is in line with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. And you can read the other kind of requirements. You must have a discrimination complaint policy, and you must have a policies, procedures to ensure non-discrimination, equal opportunity for persons with disabilities. And hearing some background noise, if you can please mute. Yeah, thank you. So one thing to note that if you do not have one of these, CU will require implementation of one. And we anticipate that, for example, nonprofits may have to get board approval to implement policies like these. So it will be helpful to review your policies as soon as possible, and let us know if you need any help kind of addressing language that would meet the requirements the CU has related to these policies. Alrighty, and lastly, the no audit questionnaire. Sorry, I'm just going to make sure everyone's muted. There we go. Okay. So the no audit questionnaire, this is the 3rd form we'll need filled out. And this really relates to your ability to manage funding from the federal government. A few notes here for the header. We're giving you what you need to enter there. And then there's a list of questions kind of relate to how your organization's financial side is managed. So, for example, do you have financial statements reviewed by an independent public accounting firm? Have you been audited? Do you have a federally negotiated indirect cost rate? And then a few questions here related to kind of, tracking inventory, tracking finances, tracking, benefits, time and attendance, et cetera. So yeah, just, to the best of your ability, fill these out when you have questions. I assume there will be many questions related to this form. When you have questions, me and Andrew Osborne and the CU side can help address them. So, do not hesitate to reach out if you have questions on any of these when it comes time to reviewing them and filling it out. The last part of this form is really just kind of, certifying that you have the ability or you will agree to kind of the list of requirements. A lot of this, it will help cover the bases as it pertains to meeting kind of federal requirements around uniform guidance, where if federal funds are getting into, the pocket or, are being managed by us or managed by our subrecipients, there are just certain requirements that have to be met. So this is kind of covering our bases in the event in the future, if this program were audited, that we all kind of have the appropriate management principles in place to comply with that audit. Okay, and then kind of getting back to project budgets really quick. This is really important to kind of work with us on as soon as possible. So the main thing to look at for the quotes that you have to date are that they are for a Davis-Bacon project, and that your contractors can comply with the Build America, Buy America requirement. So this could be something you need to go back to the contractors that you're in touch with, the companies you're in touch with to get those quotes and kind of see, hey, if this were a Davis-Bacon project, how would this quote change? The big, change with Davis-Bacon is there's kind of more time as far as kind of administrative compliance requirements from these retrofit contractors. And there's also kind of weekly timesheet submission requirements. And the big one is that there's a requirement to pay everybody according to the prevailing wage in the county where the construction project is occurring. So that will be kind of looking at the prevailing wage for each county and ensuring that the electricians, any real tradesperson working on the project is getting paid at least what the prevailing wage is there. The next step, once we have kind of the project budget, is working on a cost share budget. And I can show an example of this later, but that will kind of break down how much of your 20% of the project of cost share will be in-kind services. So maybe there's someone that has their accounting degree in your organization who'd be willing to donate their time to do the invoicing. Their time holds value. And so those hours spent doing invoicing, submitting them, making sure they're getting paid, could count towards cost share. If you have contractors that are willing to do engineering designs or really anything related to the construction project, if they're willing to donate to that project and not be paid for those services, then that would count towards project budget, cost share. And lastly, if you have funding where you can pay for equipment or you can pay for contractor services out of pocket, that can also count as cost share, but you will not be reimbursed by CU for those expenses. And lastly, I mentioned this before, but if indirects are allowable on this, we'll want to make sure that if you would like to collect that, that it is included in your budget and that it is calculated correctly, because there is kind of a trick to calculating the modified total direct cost value. But it's not required. You do not, if it's allowable, you do not have to charge indirects. Okay. I'm going to stop for 1 second, just kind of look at chat and see if I can address any of these. So yeah, National Environmental Policy Act. Do we only need one quote for each phase of our project? I'll get to that. You may be able to get away with one quote in the event that either you cannot identify another contractor that can provide that service, or there's not another one that would maybe be willing to do it. If it's Davis-Bacon, for example, we can do a sole source justification. The best route is to get, three quotes, but we understand that that could be a lot of work. So please reach out to us on the kind of number of quotes requirement, and if needed, we can do a sole source justification for you. Um, and question here, confirm you want to see contracts that the subrecipients enter into with actual vendors. Yeah, that would be ideal. We will want to be involved in kind of the bidding and contracting process just to ensure that, for example, Davis-Bacon requirements are in that contract. And that all the kind of requirements that we're seeing from the Department of Energy are met. There's some things that I'll get to later around, kind of documentation from the contractors that they're allowed to do the work and all that. Let's see, net on invoices. I will have to get back to you on that. I'm not 100% off the top of my head. If it's net 30 or net 45. Kathy?
Nick, I'm happy to respond to that now.
Yeah.
The requisitions and the purchase orders will be set up as net zero and will be paid upon internal approval. So once you send your invoice in, and our team, I'm Kathy Stutzman, I'm the financial manager of this award. Once the invoice comes in, and we will be working with each of you closely on that, the invoice comes in, it'll be routed internally for approvals, looking at the documentation that's been requested. Then after it goes through approvals, it will get paid that day via check. The University of Colorado pays via check. So as you're setting your marketplace supplier up, and thank you, almost half of you have completed that process. As you're completing that process, think about the address that we will want. You'll want the address on the invoice that we want to be mailing that check to, that the university will be mailing it to. That's good.
Thank you, Kathy. And there's kind of another question kind of related to that. Subrecipients must front the funds to pay the vendors and that get reimbursement quarterly. You'll be reimbursed monthly, once the invoices are approved, so more frequently than quarterly. But yes, the ideal scenario is the subrecipients would pay the vendors and then get reimbursed by CU. If that is not possible, please reach out to us, and we can discuss, possible other options, but I cannot guarantee that there are other options. Then there's a question around previous communications to our commitment to cost share. This should have been brought up. Well, this definitely brought up, during our kind of previous meetings about the program, and it should have been discussed during the one-on-one once you are selected to proceed to this phase. So if that is a kind of surprise, please contact Eric and Monsef and kind of coordinate with them on how there was a miscommunication there. And Judy, I see your question around, if individuals or firms contribute cash or in-kind services, can you get credit for that? Yes. And I will go into a detail of how that happens later in this talk. And last question here, are actual subcontractors solely responsible for complying with Davis-Bacon requirements? We are all going to be responsible for complying with Davis-Bacon because it's going to be in all of our contracts. And I will get into what that looks like as far as kind of whose responsibility it is to do what here in a second. So yeah, I'll move here to the next phase. Just going to check the time. Yeah, I'm way over. So I'll go kind of quickly through this section. This you can read later. As I mentioned, these slides will be on the website. But these are terms that appear in our contract with Department of Energy. One of those terms stipulates that all of the terms and conditions in CU and DOE's contract flow down to our subrecipients. And so what CU has agreed to with DOE, our subrecipients will also have to agree to with CU. And so here I'm highlighting a few of these, but I will warn you, there are 52 pages of terms and conditions in CU's contract with Department of Energy. So when you get your contract, and it is very long, A, you can blame DOE, and B, reference this to kind of, help guide you through the most important things, and reach out to us if you have questions about any parts of the contract. But a few things to note here. One is there's a requirement for compliance with all federal, state, and municipal law. A big part of this is requiring all work to kind of pull permits and meet any of the permitting requirements in the jurisdictions. NEPA, I mentioned, National Environmental Policy Act. This is really the responsibility of CU to do, but we cannot get NEPA approval until we have the project defined. National Historic Preservation Act, another one that CU is responsible for. Like I mentioned, the facilities on tribal land and the one facility that's classified as historic according to the state are going to have to go through some steps before we can kind of get them added to the budget here. And the last one is that everyone must maintain their SAM.gov registration throughout the duration of the grant. I mentioned these two, Buy America, the Build America, Buy America requirement. This relates to equipment and materials that are used in the project, and really it is responsibility of all of us to ensure this is complied with, but the contractors will really be the ones that are kind of meeting this requirement. And I'll get into more detail of that later. And the last one is here is Davis-Bacon. And I mentioned this, but really this is ensuring that all the workers are paid prevailing wages. And we do have to review those timesheets on a weekly basis. This page kind of goes into some financial requirements that will be in our contract. I've mentioned a few of these already, so I won't go into detail. But the big one is that everyone must adhere to uniform guidance requirements, which is also referred to as 2 CFR Part 200 as amended by 2 CFR Part 910. And lastly, these are just two more. I think that there'll be a requirement to kind of maintain your inventory. So equipment that is provided or purchased through this grant, there are some requirements around, keeping it and reporting when it is no longer needed or in use over a certain amount of time. And the last one is there may be, requests for site visits from the DOE at some point, which has not occurred yet. Okay, so uniform guidance. You will see this all the way through your contract. It kind of plugs into a lot of different parts of kind of how federal funding is used by people that are contracting with the federal government. A big one here, and this kind of gets to the quotes question, is the acquisition process. So most of our projects will fall into this category of simplified acquisition, so a $2,000 to $250,000 project. What uniform guidance requires is that whoever's kind of doing the procurement has to get at least 3 quotes from qualified sources. If that's not possible, then we have to do sole source justification and justify the use of fewer than 3 quotes. So it's not impossible to use 1. It's not impossible to get away with 2. 3 is ideal, but short of 3, we will have to do some justifying. And the other items on this, you can review. They were on prior slides. Really, the goal of a lot of this is to protect everybody and make sure that we're just meeting the requirements of the federal government. And so, to the best of our ability, CU deals with a lot of federal funding. We know how to do this, so we can help guide kind of regarding what's required. NEPA and the National Historic Preservation Act. It is primarily the responsibility of CU to ensure NEPA compliance. And the way this looks is quarterly, we submit logs to the NEPA Division of Department of Energy. They review those logs. Once our projects are defined, we can submit logs to NEPA saying, hey, we're planning on doing this and that. And we have kind of what's called bounded categories that we'll report on, where, when we submit this log and all of our activities fall within these bounded categories, the NEPA people will say, all right, you're approved, and then we can do construction. But no construction can occur before we have this NEPA approval. So really, as soon as we have projects well-defined, we can get these NEPA logs submitted and get approvals. And I won't go through the National Historic Preservation Act item again, because we've been through that a couple times already. But again, that's a responsibility to CU to be in compliance. We may reach out to you if we have questions about, from the SHPO office or from the THPO office related to the projects. All right, and then Davis-Bacon Act. This is required by DOE. CU, subrecipients, and retrofit contractors will all have to work together to ensure compliance. And there's a piece of software called LCP Tracker that we will use to ensure compliance. The responsibilities are broken down here. So CU is responsible for managing LCP Tracker. We will be reviewing and certifying weekly timesheets. And we will kind of be working with DOE to make sure that LCP Tracker is set up correctly, that everything's running smoothly there. One other piece of Davis-Bacon is that DOE may require us to do on-site job site interviews. And if that were to happen, our subrecipients need to help us, coordinate that, and the retrofit contractors have to kind of accommodate that. Those interviews are to make sure that if you're, telling us that a certain level of electrician is working on this project, that it's really not someone lower down and getting paid less, and that kind of thing. A lot of Davis-Bacon is ensuring that what we're paying these contractors to do is what's actually occurring, and there's no money being pocketed. Subrecipients, what you all are required to do is really help us with communication with your retrofit contractors. So if they're not submitting weekly timesheets, we need your help bugging them to remind them to do so. If there's any kind of discrepancies between, what they're reporting and what's actually happening, we need your help because we won't be there to kind of help us address that. And the retrofit contractors will be required to get onboarded onto LCP Tracker, submit weekly timesheets, pay prevailing wages, post prevailing wages, and accommodate job site interviews. So this is a big one. It will be a pain. And I will be the point of contact for all of that. So I will be the one certifying timesheets. If there are issues, I will be your point of contact to help get things addressed. The next one is Build America, Buy America. So BABA, for short, is also one we'll all have to work together on. I won't get into all this detail because we'll kind of know more exactly how this needs to flow once we have the projects defined and once we know what kind of what equipment or materials will be used in your project. But the way BABA is defined is that public infrastructure projects that are receiving federal funding have to comply. And as BABA is defined, places of worship will be categorized as public. So BABA will apply to your facilities. The big ones are iron and steel used in the project. So since we're not building anything, from the ground up, that doesn't necessarily apply, but there may be instances where iron and steel are included. So that's where kind of a manufactured product would fall into the category here. And construction materials also may apply here. And the big requirement is that these things are manufactured or created in the United States, or some percent of them are created in the manufactured in the United States. What's kind of nice for all of us is that ultimately BABA is kind of part of the vendors who are purchasing things from. It's their responsibility to tell us whether their product is BABA compliant or not. If it is not, or if the vendor that's selling us a heat pump or some kind of controls technology, if they can tell us no, or we're not compliant, or or if it is, if their equipment or supplies are BABA compliant, then we'll get a certificate of compliance. That's the ideal route. If they're not compliant, then we can apply for a waiver. And there's 3 types of waivers: public interest, non-availability, or unreasonable cost. And we'll kind of have to go through a case-by-case basis as to which waiver would apply. And it will be the CU team requesting DOE for these waivers on behalf of the subrecipients. This is a quick flow chart. Is your facility public? Most definitely yes for all of our projects here, I think. Is there installation of steel, iron, manufactured products, or construction materials? Yes. At least one of those categories will apply. Can we get BABA certified products? Ideally, yes, then we can get their certificates. If not, then our team will apply for a waiver. Okay. And I would say the last kind of requirement here is what CU will require. So this is kind of beyond what DOE is requiring, but it is kind of things that are defined within the tasks that we have to do for DOE that we will need your help with. So for example, we will need a contract schedule, and that needs to be submitted to Department of Energy prior to any construction activities. We are required to do a final quality control inspection. So we will need your help kind of coordinating that once the project is complete. And then at the start or at the end of the project, we will need like itemized labor material invoice per project. So that'll be part of your invoices to us. Some forms related to satisfaction, quality control, contractor licenses. We'll need pictures before and after of the retrofits and of the building. Assurance of guarantee work form, and then final release waiver of lien forms. So, you know, when you do your final payment to the contractors that are doing the retrofits, we will need to kind of confirm that they're fully paid and that there's no outstanding expenses or invoices. Okay. And the last step is we need you to help us with measurement verification. The big part of this is continuing to provide us utility bills for a year after the retrofit is completed, because we will use that in our analysis. And we may need to go on site and do some measurements. So you'll need to help us accommodate on-site measurements. All right. There is a component, I won't go into detail here, but the DOE would like to interview a few subrecipients of the RAND program. One, everything's done. It's not a requirement. We as a university are required to connect Department of Energy with 3 subrecipients that might be willing to do interviews. But if they reach out, you don't want to do one, you can say no, it's not required. But you know, it can help get your good word out about you know your success in participating in this program. So if you're interested, let us know, and we'll certainly recommend that Department of Energy reach out to you. Okay, and I'll kind of wrap up here. We already went into Marketplace. The big thing is please send us the contact name, email, phone number for the person in your organization who will handle invoices and can provide us a W-8 or W-9. It's really important that we get you added to Marketplace. It's not taking as long as it can right now to get organizations added to this system. It can take a while. So the sooner that we get you added, the less that, you know, that can be a delay that holds things up. If you have any questions about what this means, what Marketplace is, I'm including a link here. But it's really just a platform that we use to manage invoices and purchase orders, contracts. All right, CU invoicing. We'll have more details on this, but you can refer to this later. The big thing is here, you know, once you're under contract with us, once you've incurred expenses, or once you want to report cost share, you will do so by submitting invoices to CU. Here are the emails that you will kind of, you know, CC on for submitting that. We have a template. I will just flash it on the screen, but this will be provided to you. We have a template that meets all of the procurement service center's requirements for what needs to be on a invoice for CU. So you will have access to this. We can kind of walk through people as needed to figure out how to fill this out. Our goal is to make this relatively simple. And you will see that you will have expenses that you will get reimbursed for section here, and then things that you are paying out of pocket for and not getting reimbursed, or any kind of, you know, volunteer time you can report as cost share in this invoice. We will have another form that will go into more detail here of what that cost share looks like. And so we will ask you to submit this cost share contribution certification with each invoice. This will help us track kind of how everyone's doing with your cost share, and making sure that you know, all the requirements are being met. or on the way to being met to get that 20% during the life of the contract for the project. Okay, and I'll note that CU will be tracking all of this, but please also track on your side your expenses, your cost share, so we can make sure we're all in agreement on what's been billed and what's been reported. Cost share reporting. So we will require at least 20% of your project budget up to the federal share of $200,000. So if your budget of what you can get reimbursed for is $200,000 from the federal share, your cost share will be 20% of that. If your project costs exceed $20,000, all exceedance must be paid by recipients. So if your project is $500,000, the federal share will be that 200,000, and the cost share will have to make up that exceedance, or 300,000. You will need to report cost share with every invoice. And since we are reporting to Department of Energy quarterly, and we have to meet our own cost share reporting requirements to Department of Energy, we're going to ask that each quarter, so each 3 invoices, that at least 20% of any invoiced expenses are reported as cost share. You can over-report. So if you want to report all 20% in your first invoice, that's great. That might not be possible, right? If this is all in-kind services, those services need to have occurred in order to report that cost share. But if you're buying a big piece of equipment and $40,000 of that is going to be paid for and not reimbursed, you can get all of your cost share covered right away. So just kind of work with us, but keep in mind that CU is going to have to report our own kind of certain amount of cost share to Department of Energy every quarter. And so if you're not meeting your cost share cadence, we can't necessarily, we'll have a challenge meeting ours. And I showed you the template. All right. This last slide is really just a breakdown of these roles and responsibilities I went through. So, CU is under contract with DOE, subrecipients will be under contract with CU, retrofit contractors will be under contract with subrecipients. Subrecipients and CU have to comply with uniform guidance. It's really CU's responsibility to meet NEPA and National Historic Preservation Act requirements. It's all of us that will be kind of meeting Davis-Bacon and BABA requirements. There are kind of, CU has a lot of requirements related to DOE reporting, and we're going to ask for everyone's help in meeting these requirements. And then we'll require some support in measurement verification. And then, our subrecipients will be invoicing CU monthly, and CU will be invoicing DOE quarterly. All right. I kind of mentioned these already, so I'll just go quick. Big things to do now. CU Marketplace, get us your point of contact for the financial side. Contractor quotes, have a look at what you got before. If it's not kind of Davis-Bacon compliant, if the contractors need to kind of learn about what BABA is, we're happy to help with all that. If you can't get 3 quotes, let us know. We can think about sole source justification. Collaboratively, Eric O'Heen is going to be really helping everybody get to the point where we have final project budgets. It's okay if this takes a little while. The soonest we can really do much of this is maybe a couple of months from now, get projects going. But we really want to get started on this as soon as possible. Start looking at those subrecipient contract forms, the subrecipient commitment form, no audit questionnaire, civil rights evaluation tool. Our subcontracting officer will need those. And if you look at the civil rights evaluation tool and are not sure if your policies kind of meet those requirements, or if you know that they'll need to be modified, think about what cadence your board is meeting and whether or not you can get this kind of on their radar to update those policies so that we're in compliance with these CU requirements. And cost share, once we have those final budgets, we can revisit what that 20% amount will be, and we can help you draft a budget for cost share, thinking about, what services can, people in your organization or affiliated with your organization provide, what equipment, you might have cash available to pay for that would not be reimbursed, and that kind of thing. So that's it. Just kind of keep in mind, we are here. We're at the very start of everything. It's okay if we have questions and don't have the answers to everything, but we will be working and doing our best to kind of get us there. So that's all for me. I did go long, but I do have time to answer any questions. So please go on off mute and ask questions, and I'll kind of start looking through the chat now.
One question on the in-kind efforts that are going to be part of the invoicing. Are we to, put a monetized amount of money towards that and then say it's all in kind, or how, so put it in the invoice as whatever amount of time spent at a certain pay rate, et cetera, and then in kind. And if we hire somebody, because a lot of this is way too much for volunteers to take on alone, right?
Yeah.
So we may end up then having a dollar sign paid towards it. And so the question is double-edged there. So, some of it we may bill internally by volunteers in kind, and some of it will be hired.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And for the volunteer hours, yes, you will be asked to assign a per hour monetary value of their donated time. And that will need to be kind of competitive with what type of services they're providing. Go ahead, Kathy. And you're mute.
So yes, so this came up in another question in the chat too. So yes, we have a form that we will work with you to help complete, but the in-kind is actually related to how the university is receiving it. So you may, as a subrecipient, receive cash to help support part of your project, and you're going to report that in your cost share as in kind, because the cash is not coming to the university. The cash is coming to you as a donation, whether it's time, services, or money. And so you're going to be reporting your cost share using a form that we have a standardized template that you'll be able to use. You'll report it on your invoice, and we'll talk about that as we get to the invoicing stage, not today. But everything that goes on within your cost share is going to be considered in kind, because nothing is being paid to the university. Does that make sense?
Understood. That makes sense. Now, the reason I'm asking this is that, if we were going to hire an accountant, for example, to do certain tasks like invoicing, and let's say somebody volunteers to do the accounting work, an accountant typical charge is X. Do you guys have guidance on what that X is, so that we can kind of use something reasonable and customary?
We do, yeah.
Yes,
we can help with that. And it'll be kind of discipline or expertise dependent. But yeah, we can help with that. The big thing is they can't be like, oh, I'm $2,000 an hour, and then you're going to get all your
that's why
costs
I'm
covered
asking.
in like a few hours. It does need to kind of be within the range of what would typically be billed.
Absolutely.
For that type of
That's
role.
why I'm asking. Yeah, I think, if it is $40 an hour for accounting work, or $80, I don't know what it is. So that's the thing that we need
Yeah.
we can Google it and try to figure out what the average cost is, but it will be simpler if you guys provide specific guideline on what those amounts are.
Yeah, we can do our best, as we're working on the share budgets to help kind of maybe have a common, range that we're using. But, I don't want to, it may be that your accountant has, 30 years of experience and, has a hourly rate that's relatively high compared to maybe someone that just got their CPA. And so there can be a range. I don't want to say that everyone needs to have the exact same hourly rate for, in kind, like accounting services. Go ahead, Debbie. I see you had your hand raised.
Yes. Can you clarify for me, if we have an employee at the church that is going to take on some of the invoicing policies for us, can we bill an in-kind service for that?
Yes, if that is volunteer, like in the if you there's two routes, I will
Okay.
say. It could be included in the budget of the project. That would, like you people at your facility could get paid to help support this project. That would be like personnel on the project budget. There would be fringe benefits, indirects, that kind of thing. Or we could include that as cost share, donated time to the project by your organization.
Okay. Donated by the organization.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I will keep going through here because I know we're out of time. Thank you. If you need to run, feel free to reach out to us if you have questions. Um, there's a question from Patricia along with invoices from vendors, we will need to request detailed payroll information to provide to prove that vendor is abiding by Davis Bacon. They will be using this software tool called LCP Tracker to submit timesheets, and CU will be kind of looking at kind of what their scope of work is, who they said was going to be doing what during that project, and making sure that the timesheets they're submitting match up with what they said they were going to do. There may be some need for like spot checking, and if that is the case, then kind of work together to coordinate that or do job site interviews.
Nick, let me ask you a question. This is Pat. I
Yeah.
asked you that question. So, are you saying that the vendors we use are going to have to submit all of their invoices to us through LCP Tracker, or just the timesheet portions of that?
Good question. So, LCP Tracker will be something that the subcontractors are submitting separately from their invoicing.
Okay.
So the invoices will go to you, and but the LCP Tracker stuff, the Davis Bacon compliance, that will really ultimately go to me on a weekly basis. And they may be invoicing you maybe once a month. It kind of depends on the way the contract with the retrofit contractor is written. Maybe it's part up front, part at the end. These construction contracts can look a lot of different ways. So the invoicing side of what's happening with the retrofit contractors will be kind of between you and them. When the
Okay, so let
project is
me ask you
going,
another. Hang on, let me ask you
Go
another
ahead.
question. So, is LCP Tracker a CU proprietary piece of software, or vendors familiar with that? And the reason I'm asking that is because when we're actually out trying to contract, we need to let our contractors know that they are going to be to be awarded the project. They are going to have to submit this information to.
Yeah.
And so we need to kind of know what that is so we can talk to them about that up front, correct? Because I assume it's a CU
Certainly.
proprietary software, right?
It is not. It is.
Okay.
I'm not a Davis Bacon expert. I'm kind of learning as I go, so I admit that up
Okay.
front. My understanding is there are a few pieces of software that companies have created to help kind of ensure Davis Bacon compliance. LCP Tracker is one of those. And
Okay.
Department of Energy is actually the kind of originator for this. They separately for this program have a contract with LCP Tracker where they're buying licenses and kind of setting up the environment so that all the Renew America's nonprofits primes can use this tool to meet Davis Bacon in our projects. My other thing is I know that like CU Boulder as a entity, we've done like state funded projects, and the same tool is used for those by the state in many cases. So I think it's a common one, but I can't say like how common. I'm fingers crossed they're familiar with it. We do have trainings. We will provide kind of trainings and onboarding to the contractors so that they know how to use it and that they're set up correctly.
Okay, I understand now. Thank
I've got
you.
a question, Nick. This is Michael Holtz. We're envisioning most of our contractor contracts to be contracts or purchase orders, fixed price purchase orders, to try to minimize surprises. So when you have a fixed price and you're billing on the percent completion, how does that tie into Davis-Bacon since it's going to be a percent completion of the project, of the work?
Yeah, their Davis-Bacon will be purely related to kind of the
Labor.
what expenses they are incurring, versus kind of the how you're being invoiced as far as a percent completion goes. So they should be separate things. The contractors will be, it's basically they'll have to be, having a record of the hours that everyone worked, what position that, person was in, and then, entering that into this tool, completely separate from, the payment relationship between you and these vendors. But yeah, and like Patricia said, it's kind of related to their labor payment process.
Yeah, more
Kathy,
work.
you had your hand up, so I wanted to go ahead, Michael. Or Kathy, go.
Okay, I'll jump in. So a lot of this seems like a lot, and we're here to support you and help all of you succeed. The A word has not been mentioned, and so I just need to say from the financial perspective and from Nick's perspective, because we've talked about this as we were preparing for this meeting, a lot of these things we're getting ahead of any kind of audit we may experience in 2 years. So some of this may seem like a lot and arduous. We will all get into a rhythm of how this works. It will become, as it becomes familiar, it will become more comfortable, and it will definitely help all of us comply with any audit that may come in at the back end. So we're just doing this to protect all of us, yourselves included, so that we've just got everything that we're going to be asked for at the end.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Craig, I see you had a question. When can in-kind contributions begin to be charged against the project? I'm a consultant and be donating some of my time over the next few months helping Subrecipient with their contractor onboarding, contractor budget, schedule development. So I think the answer to this question is when we are under contract with you, that is the day upon which you can start tracking and recording cost share. So kind of help for kind of getting the contract over the line would not count, but anything that occurs after that, yes, track that time. That will be cost share reportable contributions to the project.
One clarification with regards to the 3 quotes. So when we looked for contractors to do our project, we got it quoted by 2 different contractors, and we picked one of them, and they had a budget that was approximated by the team, from your RAM team. Do we need a 3rd contractor, or is it that the work that or the items that they're going to purchase, they need to get 3 quotes on those? So that's just the clarification I wanted to get.
Yes, good question. My understanding, and team, feel free to jump in, is that it will be kind of the bids for the projects themselves. So, and again, it's ideally 3. That's kind of what that requirement is. It will be CU's responsibility to kind of understand the situation and assess whether this uniform guidance requirement is met or not, and whether like a sole source justification would be needed. In the case of like a dual source, right, kind of where you're at, you have done, some comparative analysis to see competitive quotes. I don't want to speak for the team and really our subcontracting officer and his team, but our sense is that should be sufficient. But if you're able to just kind of send an email and, hey, can I get a quote from one other person, just knowing it, just get another one, hopefully it doesn't take too much time, but that would just help us, kind of meet this requirement. Kathy, anything to add there?
Sure, I'll add just a little bit, and I know we have our contract officer, not our subcontract officer, here with us, or a grants officer. But what we found with subcontracting is when we have to supply a sole source justification, which we can do, particularly if it's already included in an award or in something that's been approved by the feds, we can say that this particular contractor, let's say in the case of the 2 quotes and one already moved forward, that we can say that this particular contractor is uniquely qualified to fulfill the requirements of this project. And so for some of you who are in super rural areas, they may be the only contractor around, or they may have been vetted by DOE or by the RAN team at CU. So sole source justification is something we can easily ask for. And I say that easily in quotes. If you have 2 or 3, that cuts a whole line of questioning off that we don't have to go through.
Yeah, and honestly, after listening to all this, I think the contractor who gave us the lowest bid, I'm not sure they'll have the discipline or the ability to conform with these stringent DOE requirements. So I feel like we need another third quote.
And so, and that's a really important thing, because the justification that it's the lowest bid is not a justification for sole source. Sole source, what the marketplace, what the contractors here at the university are looking for is who's the most qualified to do this work and complete this project satisfactorily.
Got it. Yep.
Okay, Carl had a question here. Volunteers who will be doing prep work and cleanup work for at least 2 contractors. And this labor be calculated as Davis-Bacon rates. You can use, if there's a category for that within prevailing wages, you could use that prevailing wage as kind of the hourly rate, and that total amount could be used for cost share reporting, because that labor would not be necessarily, it wouldn't be the contractor's labor, it'd be kind of volunteers. So that would be, using prevailing wages to quantify that labor.
Construction labor, is on Bacon Davis. And then I have one other question. I typed it before. Question has come up several times about federal specifications for equipment that these people are providing. And we were told at one point, well, your contractor will know what that is, but my contractors don't know. And I need some reference so we can make sure that what they're bidding is compliant with the federal requirements. And that's going to apply to everyone, not just us.
Yeah.
I understand the BA and everything, but there are also things with energy efficiency and a number of other things that we just don't have, and we need those before we finalize a final bid with them.
That's true. Yes, that's correct. And I'm kind of thinking back through the DOE requirements. BABA is the big one. I'm not recalling other federal requirements related to energy efficiency, but this will be something, thank you for bringing this up, Carl. If there are requirements beyond Build America, Buy America, we will communicate those to everybody. We can share the terms and conditions that we have with DOE with you, if you would like to look through those. But yeah, the big one is Build America, Buy America, BABA, and kind of thinking about whether or not we need to be asking for waivers for those, or whether the vendors can identify materials and products that kind of qualify for that.
Yeah, we're looking at water heater replacement, furnace replacement, and the biggest item will be windows. We don't want to replace 20-some windows and then find out they don't qualify.
Yeah, so
you have to do that before you complete the bid.
Certainly, yeah, and and that's, we kind of, I personally, I kind of feel bad, right? We had to get all these quotes in order to get everybody approved by DOE to kind of get
Right.
rough budgets, but we kind of knew, right, at some point we were going to have to discuss with all these extra requirements and get these quotes updated. But it's a good thing because, yeah, now that we're all on the same page as to kind of what these requirements are, to the best of our ability, we can work together and make sure that these are being communicated correctly to these vendors. So if there are any additional requirements, we'll go through that contract again and let you all know. But off the top of my head, Baba's the big one.
Nick, I have a comment and a question.
Yeah.
The comment is this: you said that the subrecipients have to front the costs for these bills, and then they send them to you, and you return money to them. So the bills you're going to get have already been paid, essentially. Now,
Right.
I hope all the Cycle 1 subrecipients take a hard look at that to see what kind of problems that's going to cause for them going forward. They're going to have a lot larger sums of money available possibly to pay these bills than they're actually going to spend on the whole project.
So Victor, this is Kathy. I'd like to respond to that. So when the subrecipient turns their invoices into the university will pay the subrecipient. So we're not paying the contractors, we're paying you as subrecipients. And as Nick mentioned very early on, if there's a large purchase that's coming up that could create a cash flow problem, then work with us. We can, in some cases, accommodate that within the university system. Okay. So and we want you to be invoicing monthly so that we get into a regular cadence so that you've got the reimbursed money back as soon as possible. We're gonna try to support you as best we can in this.
And typically, in something like this, we wouldn't pay until we get paid
So
because it's a catch-22. You're asking the subrecipient to be the bank, and I think it's not really fair to them using it since there's going to be a delay in payment back. So my philosophy has always been, we'll pay you when we get paid.
So, and Michael, we can certainly talk about that. These contracts are going to be set up as cost reimbursable to the subrecipient. The good news to the subrecipients is we're not withholding our payment until we get paid, because we may not get paid 6 months until 6 months after we've paid you. So we're trying to be as fair and as equitable as we can and build capacity. And again, we can look at some accommodations that we may need to make to help ease that cash flow, but these are going to be set up as cost reimbursable contracts.
Do you have any idea how long it takes you to get a check out to the
Sure.
subrecipient?
Sure.
And
And I
once
think
we submit,
So, and that goes back to Erica's question. She asked the question about what net is, and I realized we didn't explain that. So as soon as the invoice gets sent in, so it'll be sent in digitally to the procurement company. It'll go into Marketplace. It takes them 24 hours to get it into our queue for approval. We will look at that approval. We've been turning those around very quickly, and then the procurement company will send a check out within 24 hours of the approval. So it could be 3 days, it could be 5 days. It could be, we have a system that we've set up for this is a unique project of the University of Colorado. And so we've worked with a variety of entities to ensure that we can get you your money as soon as we can.
but it won't be 2 or 3 months.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right, I had one question with regards to the original quotes that we built to fit the exact project outline that was indicated with certain estimates, right? Since then, I think the world has changed, right? And now that we understand the requirements, I think there are a lot of things. Is the limit now because initially, let's say, for example, it was $70,000, $80,000, and now it may actually have become more, like 120 or 130. Is the cap now the 200K and be, us paying 20,000 or contributing 20,000 towards that? And if we go beyond 200K, from one of your slides, that was what I wrote down, is, everything is our responsibility. Or is that the cap? Is that the true cap right now?
That's the true federal share cap, correct?
Okay.
Yeah.
Because at the time there
And
were like some windows, there was only, for example, one broken window, right? Well, we need to replace all the windows to really guarantee that we have insulation, because they may have leaked and all that stuff. So a lot
yeah,
of things, what I would like to do is make sure that we put a new project list as well as cost estimate as we get more quotes into this.
that's perfect. Yes. And we understand that costs have increased. I know we've heard from a number of the nonprofits that, things are much more expensive now. And so, we have the funding to support, everybody, but, and we understand that costs have increased. So just kind of work with us to understand kind of, if your project is changing from what was originally scoped, kind of help us understand what that change looks like. Because a lot of the original scoping was based on kind of our projected energy savings, right?
Right.
And we
So
have
we'll,
energy saving targets. In order to still meet those, if costs have increased, that, that's something we just have to understand. We've talked about this with DOE quite a bit. And part of our frustration with the delay that we've, incurred is that, these quotes are all so out of date now, and these companies, like, so much has changed in the last year. And, some projects have already moved forward, and we have to kind of scope a new one. And yeah, it's an unfortunate reality of the way this program has occurred. And we just have to kind of be as nimble as we possibly can. If the scope of the project, right, if we need to redefine it, communicate that with Eric, and we can kind of look again at kind of what was projected as far as energy savings, and what the associated cost increase would be, how that kind of fits into our overall kind of budgeting for all the subrecipients together. But yeah, we understand that the dollar doesn't go as
thank
far
you.
as it did a year ago.
No, I appreciate it.
And
I
then
think at the end, what I plan to do is kind of put the old versus the proposed and send it to Eric, and hopefully kind of make the case that we don't want to do partial work and not get the results that we're looking for from an energy saving perspective. So at the end of the day, the goal is to achieve something that's tangible. Okay, thanks.
Certainly. And Debbie, I think you have the same question, but please, if you want further clarification.
No, I think I got it. I think I'm good. Thank you.
Cool. Great. And I know we're way over time, so I'll just kind of answer these last couple of questions in the chat, and if there are any more, please come off mute. But Jay had a question: do we select the contractor, or is it based on the bid? A low bid wins. So it's not necessarily low bid wins. I think kind of understanding, like I think Mohammed was mentioning, kind of thinking about the capacity of these vendors to kind of meet these requirements and do a good job should be weighed in the decision. CU is here to support the selection, and we are here to support the bid process. So if you would like our team to look at bids, talk with contractors or vendors, get involved to a certain extent with this, we can do that. Ultimately, it will be your decision, because it will be you entering into contract with these vendors. But we are here to support you in making that decision, and kind of making our recommendations and thinking about this. Our team has experience with this. CU also, the next question from Judy relates to, does CU have a list of pre-approved vendor partners? We can, CU does construction, and CU has vetted certain vendors. They might be a different kind of vendor than you're getting quotes from, because CU is typically doing very large projects. They do some small projects too. And so, there may be firms in CU's approved list that, would be kind of in the same ballpark of what these projects do. But, I wouldn't necessarily, CU has, I would say, every time I talk with someone related to facilities and construction at CU, they have a lot of approved vendors, and some of them are their favorites and some are not their favorites. So just because they're approved by CU doesn't mean that CU is always hiring them. I see Kathy reacting. I don't know if I said too much there, but alrighty.
Yeah, I think CU has different standards and require a different level of contractor capabilities, right? So it is difficult for us to use those guys because the charges may overwhelm us on that level. Yeah.
Yeah. And Craig, yes, you're becoming an expert on kind of this subrecipient, this contracting side. If you would like to, support others in this process, you're welcome to. Yeah, the more community we can build as we all embark on this journey, the better. I almost want to set up like a Teams chat for everybody so we can do that.
That'd be
I've done
great.
that before in other projects, and it's been helpful just to kind of somewhat it's commiserating, and somewhat it's just opening channels of conversation. So we can look into ways to kind of have open communication channels. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I know that was a lot of information. I mentioned earlier, the slides will be available on our website. I will get that uploaded hopefully by Monday. I know it's kind of late on a Friday, so thank you all for being here late on a Friday. This recording will be posted to YouTube. They usually get it up pretty quickly once I submit it. So again, we're here for kind of the next steps, budget development, project scope, defining all that. Erica Oheen will be your point of contact. I will be your point of contact when it comes to kind of Davis-Bacon questions, kind of the more administrative side of things. I can be a connection between you and others at CU, whether it's our finance team. They're also available if you need some help with invoicing. So we can have conversations about what that might look like, whether it's subcontracting and kind of what that whole process looks like. I can connect you with the team here at CU that will be doing that. And just don't hesitate to send us an email, because we'll be doing our best to just kind of keep everyone on the same page moving forward as we get this done. So we're looking forward to it. I think we're going to do some good here. Unfortunately, I don't have the good news that we have the contract for the next phase yet with DOE, but literally any day now. And we're very confident that this is all moving forward, which is why we're doing all of this. So thank you. Have a great weekend. Take care, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, Nick.
Bye.